Second World War is a contradictive time for numerous fashion brands, not only due to poor economic situation in European countries, lack of materials and customers, but due to alleged collaboration with enemy. Chanel, Dior, Louis Vuitton. History of those brands was complicated due to speculations and publications in press where journalists analyzed close ties of those brands with German occupation authorities and with French collaborationist Vichy government. Hi, I'm Igor Nevzorov. Welcome to Copyrighted Dreams. In our videos we cover stories related both to intellectual property law and history of humankind from the places where important events occurred. In some sources, it is stated Coco Chanel used German occupation of France to re-establish her control over Chanel No. 5 brand against her previous companions, Wertheimer brothers. Finally, dispute was settled only after victory in Europe, when parties agreed new shares of income for each other. Journalists denote close ties of Louis Vuitton fashion house with French Vichy government and numerous business dealings with Germans. Other sources underline involvement of Christian Dior brand in business activities with Germans during wartime period. Separate story is the history of German fashion brand Hugo Boss, who was accused by mass media in designing uniform for German soldiers. However, as it was determined within performed historical research, actually Hugo Boss was only manufacturer, not designer of such uniform for several German military regiments, while real designer of uniform was Karl Diebitsch, German graphic designer who drafted most of black German military uniform. At that time, from Copyrighted Dreams perspective, most contradictive and important French fashion designer of that period who left his footprints in history of intellectual property law was Lucien Lelong. He was a French couturier and during wartime head of French Chamber Syndicate de la Haute Couture, Paris fashion industry trade association. Numerous sources indicate that after occupying France, German government decided to move fashion center of the world from Paris to Berlin and Vienna. According to numerous sources, on July 20, 1940, German officers arrived to headquarters of Haute Couture Chamber and seized the local archives. Those documents included information about French fashion clients, fashion houses, and French export trade. There was also a plan to move numerous French couturiers from Paris to Germany to let them train a new generations of German dressmakers. From modern intellectual property law perspective, such activities could be deemed as unauthorized access to know-how, as infringement of confidentiality of copyrights and database rights. It is possible now to file a claim requesting termination of any disclose and use of both confidential information and goods into which such information is embodied. For example, samples of fashion pieces. Things is, that time European law provided no special legal instruments to protect know-how or client database as it is denoted in modern legislation. On November 3, 1940, Mr. Lelong leaving Paris for Berlin to meet German authorities. Lelong pointed out that German plan to move French fashion industry from Paris to Germany was unworkable. French fashion style depends on thousands of skilled artisans in tiny ateliers, each specializing in one small detail. The skills were unteachable. You could not transfer them, and it took decades to reach the necessary level of craftsmanship. Germans were backed down by energy and enthusiasm of Lucien Lelong. They returned initially seized archives. Lucien Lelong has also negotiated several conditions to keep a supply of fabric to Paris to maintain fashion production, as well as has agreed limited % of fashion designers who was obliged to conscript into active army. After victory in Europe, Lelong was accused in collaboration with enemy due to facts of his negotiations with Germans. However, finally he was acquitted. From intellectual property law perspective, Lucien Lelong, to our knowledge, was actually first European businessman who has succeeded in know-how protection and who has seized confidential information and potential illegal use by non-authorized parties. Only at the next century, European countries has adopted a European directive to protect know-how now implemented in their national laws. Lucien Lelong was also one of the pioneers in protection of his fragrance package trade dress. United States court practice includes several cases initiated by company of Lelong to protect trade dress and appearance of its product. Some approaches initially proposed by company of Lelong in those litigations were supported and facilitated after Second World War in a new US trademark law, widely known now as Lanham Act. Main office of Lucien Lelong was located in Paris at Avenue Matignon. A mile away, Adolf Hitler dreamed on intellectual property harmonization. Meanwhile, across the Seine, another notable person lived. He had bravely fight against enemy and died, mort pour la France. He created amazing stories and also left his footprints in the history of intellectual property. His name was Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. We will cover his destiny in our next part of this episode, dedicated both to intellectual property law and history of humankind, from the places where important events occurred. Don't forget to subscribe on Instagram and YouTube. See you next time!